The Hario V60 is incredibly simple to use, especially if you're familiar with making a pour over at home. So I'm going to be using 20 grams of coffee. I ground the ALO Chilaka a little bit coarser than I typically would for a V60 brew, because what I've found is with sun-dried natural coffees, and especially high density, high elevation coffees like this, they have a tendency to over extract. And what I mean is bitterness starts to creep into the brew. And we want to pull out not only the fruitiness, those floral notes, the delicate tones that are sometimes easily lost in a brew like this, but we also want a lot of balance and sweetness in the cup. We don't want those oversteeped tea astringent qualities creeping in. So I'm using 20 grams of coffee, again, ground just a little bit coarser than I typically would for a V60 brew. I have my water warmed to 207 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't have a kettle that's electric, that you can choose your temperature, what I would suggest is boiling your water, letting it sit for about 1 minute, and then beginning your brew. So we're gonna start very simply. We have 20 grams of coffee in here. I'm tearing my scale, starting my timer. Water's at 207 degrees. And I'm just doing a really slow pour right in the middle and making these small circles. Never going out towards the filter completely, but just focusing on making those small circles. We're gonna use 60 grams for that first pour. I have this lovely wooden stirring stick that I keep, and I'm just gonna agitate it just a touch to make sure that all the grounds are actually being touched by water, extracting evenly. We're getting the most flavor out of the coffee that way. Again, I love the V60 because it's so classic, and for me, this is how I learned to brew pour over. Many years ago when I made my first pour over, this was the way I learned. And I wanna share my brewing method with you. So we're at about 45 seconds. I'm gonna add more water. We're gonna go up to about 150 grams of water. Again, just the same slow circular pour. Starting at the center, working our way out, and then slowly working our way back until we reach 150 grams. And my goal with this brew is to capture the essence of this coffee. That means I want a lot of fruitiness. I want floral notes. I want those tea-like jasmine tones to really pop. That's why I'm not using excessively low temperature water or excessively high, not an extremely tight grind, fine, and not very coarse either, just slightly coarser than I would typically use. I'm gonna begin adding more water here. We're gonna go up to about 250 grams. My timer is right around 1.5 minutes. And something else I want to shout out for those of you who are going to be brewing this coffee is, one thing to know about the V60 is the kind of filter you use, the kind of paper filter you use is actually going to greatly impact the flow of the coffee. See how quickly this is moving? I really recommend trying a couple different brands of V60 filters and picking out one that works for your water and your grinder. So we're right at about 2 minutes, and I'm gonna add the final amount of water. We're gonna go up to 320 grams. Actually, I changed my mind. We're gonna go up to 330 grams. The reason why is I wanna add a little bit more water, again, than I typically would, in order to give this coffee some room to breathe. It's got so much fruit, so much nuance, that I really wanna avoid over extracting and under extracting. I don't wanna pull too little flavor out. And I definitely do not want bitterness. I want to focus on sweetness. So we're doing a little bit more than 1:16 ratio. At home, you might find that a 1:17, 1:18, or maybe even a 1:15 if you like your coffee a little bit stronger, it's gonna work well for you. For me, I'm shooting for about 3-minute brew time. We're at 250 right now with the last water dripping down. This is perfect, especially with these fast filters that I'm using today. So the brew is done right about 258, which is perfect. Always swirl your coffee. We're gonna mix up all that extracted liquid. You know, at the beginning of the brew, we're actually extracting a lot more flavor than at the end, and I don't wanna pour like the least strong amount of coffee into my cup first and miss some of the strength that's sitting at the bottom. So I'm just giving this a good swirl. You can always use a spoon to move it around too. And then I'm gonna pour this into my favorite mug. So let me tell you a little bit about the experience here. Immediately what I love this coffee. What I capture is like that classic blueberry tone really stands out right on the nose. That blueberry, Concord grape, dark fruit tone that we love in Ethiopian coffees and especially in naturals. it's just there. You don't have to go looking for it. It's not like hiding in the background behind all these other notes. It's straight in your face. So I love that. It's subtly floral too. It's not as floral as some coffees, but I actually find the floral flavor to be stronger than the floral aromatics. I'm gonna take a sip here. Okay, it doesn't really get much better than that, honestly. When you're brewing videos at home, you know, you never know how perfect it's gonna be, but this is actually perfect. And what I love again is I get all the fruit. I get the peach, the stone fruit, which is very strong in a coffee like this. I get a little bit of chocolate. I get the blueberry, and then, you know, I get a touch of that jasmine tea tone as well. Let me take another sip. Yeah, yeah. And as this coffee cools, it tends to change. So, you know, this is fresh off the brew. If I were to give this another 2-3 minutes to cool down, that's where the tones like guava and passion fruit and strong melon are gonna start to come up from the background and really be a little bit more present and available. Coffees like this are so unique in that they continue to change as you drink them. And again, I want you to test at home. Maybe even if if you want, start with your own brewing method. Start with the way you'd always brew a coffee and adjust slightly. If it's too strong, try a slightly coarser grind. If it's not strong enough, try a slightly finer grind. You know, you can mess with water temperature, but honestly, you should find an approach that works for you that you can repeat over and over. Tweak very slightly, adjust to your preferences, because this is such a special coffee. You want to get the most out of it with every single brew.